The influencers Andrew and Tristan Tate have been arrested in Miami. Tonight, the U.S. Marshal Service says the potential charges against the brothers are sealed. However, British prosecutors announced they were seeking the extradition of the brothers on rape and sex trafficking charges. The Tates have always denied wrongdoing.
So Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan Tate have been arrested again, this time in Miami, Florida, right? And whether you want to believe it or not, whether you want to accept it or not, whether you like him or hate him or agree with him or disagree with him, right? You've got to respect him, right? You've got to respect Tate because he's been one of those guys, he's been one of those individuals from the very start who's been very outspoken about his convictions, right? He's been very strong in everything he says. And despite the fact that he doesn't really have a filter, right? He says what he says and he believes it, right? And most people can't do that. Most people are incapable of saying the things that they really want to say, and stand on it because they're afraid of public opinion. They're afraid of backlash and what could happen to them, what could potentially, what people could potentially do towards them, right? So, you know, Andrew Tate's one of those guys where, I do respect not now I don't agree with every single thing that he says, right? I want to say I probably agree with about 80% of the things that he says, because some things he says it is a little out there, but about 80% of the things he says I do agree with him, right? And I find it very difficult, right? I find it a lot of the things that I've been seeing him say, right? I've been watching him since like 2020, 2021, and a lot of things he says it's very difficult for me to disagree with, right? He talks about the injustices of the world, he talks about the injustices of particularly America. He talks about, the matrix and the elites, and talks about trying to improve young men's lives, right? And those are some talking points that I talk about as well, right? I'm very interested in those types of topics, but this arrest, right? I mean, I think the man's only been in the US for like not even a day, right? But they already had some type of a connection from the UK or from Romania to meet him because, like, oh yeah, Andrew Tate and his brother and his entourage, they're coming to the US. So somebody be ready to take them out, right? Somebody be ready to arrest them, right? That's what it all seems like, right? And I ask myself this question, man, like, because this isn't the first time that he's been arrested. This isn't the first time that he's been accused of all these, charges. This isn't the first time that he's gotten in trouble, right? But I ask myself this question, and I think you should ask yourself this question too, especially if you're a man watching this. But why is it always the man who is guilty, right? Why is it always the man who is guilty before proven innocent, but for women, it's innocent before proven guilty, right? And even then, when women are proven guilty, they get minimum sentences, right? They don't get in as much trouble as a man would. Why is it like that? Why is that the system that we live in, right? And you really got to ask yourself, and you really got to kind of take the time to understand what's really going on behind the scenes, right? We live in a world, right? We live in a world. First of all, we live in a feminized world. We live in a feminized world, a feminized country, right? The United States of America is running on feminine energy, chaotic feminine energy, right? And when you have too much of that, any type of masculinity, any type of, masculine presence, any type of strong male authority figure is going to automatically be seen as the bad guy, is going to automatically be seen as someone who is the opposition, right? It's automatically going to be seen as somebody who, oh, we need to get rid of him, right? Because he's too big of an influence. He's going to try to ruin our plans and et cetera, right? And it's unfortunate that that's the world we live in because, like, you don't know, I don't know, right? The people don't know what the Tate brothers have been, what they're really guilty of, right? And I'm a proponent, like I said, I'm a proponent of, innocent before proven guilty in both genders, right? I don't think that you should just go and arrest somebody just because, somebody made allegations, right? Or somebody said like you did this. Now, obviously, like, that's how the judicial system works, and these processes go. But this isn't the first time where Tate's been accused but then proven innocent, right? And he was let go, but then, like, it's like the same charges, going back and forth. So you really got to ask yourself what's really going on here. There's got to be something deeper. There's a deeper meaning behind all of this because this man constantly is getting in trouble, right? And quite frankly, I haven't heard from him in like almost a year now, right? I think he's been living his life in Romania and everything like that. So, shout out to him because he's fighting his own battles, right? He's fighting his own wars. He's taking care of his own family. And this brings up Tate's arrest, right? This and this could be my personal bias, right? But I'm sure I'm not the only man who's experienced things like this when it comes to dealing with women, when it comes to dealing with people, in general. But false allegations, man, people lying just to get back at you, this is nothing new, right? This is normal. Let me tell you guys a quick story. When I was working my previous job, man, there was this girl that I was seeing, and we had got into a fight. We got into a fight. We didn't talk with each other for about 2 days, right? And we were just ignoring each other. Now, on my day off, this girl, she goes to my job. She starts talking to my manager, and she starts telling all these lies about how I was being, abusive towards her, about how, I was like I assaulted her or whatever the case may be, right? She went to my manager and she was like, "Oh, I didn't know who else to tell because, he doesn't have his family out here." Like, cuz I was living in a different city at the time, and I live away from my family. But she was just throwing out all these things, like telling my manager, yeah, I was doing all these things and blah blah blah. Fast forward, I'm at the gym. My manager calls me. He's like, "Hey, I need you to come to the office now. We need to have a conversation." And I'm like, "Okay, what's this about?" So I leave the gym. I go to work, and there's police officers, right? There's police officers there. There is HR there, and my manager's there too. And then there she is. There's the girl that I was seeing, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, like, what's going on? And they're like, "Hey, we need you to turn around and hands behind your back and all that type of stuff, right?" So I get detained, right? I get detained, and I get taken down into questioning. And fast forward 2 months, because that's how long this investigation went, right? Fast forward 2 months, this girl that I was seeing, she comes forward and she admits to everybody. She admits to the officer. She admits to my boss, "Hey, I was lying because him and I got into a fight and he wasn't talking to me. He was ignoring me for 2 or 3 days. We weren't talking, and I just wanted to get back at him because he was irritating me, and he hurt my feelings, and blah blah blah, and yada yada yada, and all this type of stuff, right?" And so I'm there, right? And so, like, this is a story I'll never forget, because that was like my first taste of how vindictive, right? And I'm not sitting here saying it's all women, right? Like, it's not all women, but it's very difficult to really, like, not generalize when you go through something like that, right? So I do understand, right, a lot of men who are jaded towards women because of a circumstance like that, right? I do understand that. But it's gone to a point, right, where my mindset, and because I went through that experience, man, these women lie, right? These women lie like crazy. They'll lie to cover their image. They'll lie to make it seem like they're innocent and things like that, right? But and it sucks, because it also sucks because for women that have actually gone through things like that, I'm sorry, like, it sucks. It sucks to have to really go through something like that, and then you get generalized into a category of, "Oh, well, all women lie," because there's a lot of women and false allegations that come out, that talk about how men do this, but in reality, the men are innocent, right? But then, come to find out, the women are lying, and they just did it because they were vindictive, or they wanted something in return, or, like, the man wasn't, like, you know, bowing down to them, or whatever the case may be. And, it really just goes to show you, don't believe everything that you hear, right? Don't believe what's on the headlines. Don't believe the first thing that you see in the news, or whatever the case may be. Right? I made a previous video about this, talking about how, headlines will lie. Right now, headlines like this headline here about Tate getting arrested, like, yeah, he got arrested, right? It's unfortunate. And the truth, I'm sure, will come out. But to me, this all seems, very under the table. It seems very, it seems like it's something that's very, messed up, right? It seems very fishy, right? Because, like I said, this isn't the first time he's been arrested. This isn't the second time he's been arrested and accused of things that he's already been cleared of, right? And if and this is one thing that I think every man needs to understand, right? If you're a man in today's society, right, especially if you're a strong and influential man who has a lot of voices, right, a lot of the young men's voices, a lot of, like, men's voices in general, right, and you speak out against the system, you speak out against the injustices, and you start you don't have those rose colored glasses on anymore, and you start like exposing the truth for the system for what it is, right? You're going to be a target, right? You're automatically going to be a target, especially, like I said, especially if you're a man of influence and strength, and you have a lot of people who look up to you, right? Like Tate, right? Look at what happened to Charlie Kirk, right? Rest in peace to him, right? He took on debates, right? He debated a lot of different individuals regarding their beliefs. Some people couldn't handle it, and look what happened to him, right? But somehow this is the land, this is the country, land of the free, right? Freedom of speech, where you start saying your opinions and you start saying something that people don't like, and they delete you. What a country we live in, right? What a country we live in. But the whole point of my video and my story is that don't just believe everything that you see, right? Now, I'm not sitting here saying Tate's guilty or not, right? I'm not sitting here saying that he is he's got a lot of things under him, right? Who knows what things that he's guilty of, or maybe he's not guilty at all. But for something like this to happen so quickly as soon as he enters the United States, man, especially after these ongoing situations that are happening, right? It's very fishy, right? It's very fishy. It's very, you know, it's something under the table, right? It's almost as if they're trying to get rid of all these individuals who are speaking out, right? They want to accuse people, they want to continue to make these people look bad, whatever the case may be. But do your research first, right? Do your research first before you start believing things that you see, right? Don't I wouldn't say, and this goes for men and women, right? This goes for men and women. Do your research before you start accusing and believing whatever it is you see on the news, on the internet, right? Because people will say anything, right? People will say anything. People will people will start talking about certain things, and they don't even have all the facts, right? Because everybody has something they want to say. But this is the time of truth, right? This is the era of truth that we live in. So I believe more and more people need to start realizing things don't just look on the surface level, right? Don't just look on the surface level. If you're a nail that sticks out, you're going to get hit. The hammer's going to hit you if you're a nail that sticks out. So think about it. Think about all the things going on in this world, not just Tate's arrest, but think about all these other things going on in the world, right? That they're trying to hide from us, that they're trying to not expose, right? And look at the amount of things and people that are coming out, realizing that they were wrong about past offenses and past things that they believe differently. And awaken yourself. I'll see you guys in the next video.